Hello everyone, this is my 2022 Porsche Taycan. I took delivery of this in November of 2021 after about 6 months of waiting for my order to be fulfilled and my car to be built. So took delivery in November 2021. I have now had it for 2 years and about 27,000 miles, a little over 27,000 miles. So this is the Cross Turismo 4. And this has several options. Base price was for back in the 2021 days for a Cross Turismo Spec. This is the wagon version. This was about 95,000 for the base spec of the Cross Turismo 4. And on top of that, I added a whole bunch of options. The end result was a out the door sticker price of about 125,000. There was no markup for me, which I got lucky. It was pre-markup days, and yeah, it's been a great car for me. This again is the wagon style, which is the Cross Turismo version. I have one of the option packages on this is the off-road design package, which really just means that it automatically, or by default I should say, raises the ride height by about 1.5 inches versus other Taycans. And it doesn't actually go any higher or any lower than any other Taycan. All Taycans are air suspension, and so there's a range of adjustments for ride height settings. And whether or not you have the off-road package like this one has, it doesn't matter. You still get the full range of adjustments. This just defaults you to a ride height of 1.5 inch higher than a standard Taycan without the Cross Turismo body style or the off-road package with that. Now with the off-road package with the Cross Turismo body style, you also get access to a drive mode that's called gravel mode. We can talk about that a little bit later. I have actually used that before on gravel, and it was wonderful. Several times I've used that, and it definitely works. So anyways, we'll do a 2-year review of this car, and I'll give you my driving impressions after 27,000 miles. And I looked at the drive time earlier today in the UI, and it shows that I'm almost put about 1,000 hours of seat time into this thing. So it's pretty awesome. I love this car. It's was my first EV. I've since had other EVs and had other additional experiences with EVs since then. You know, obviously on my channel here, there's videos of my Model X Plaid, and there's some others that I will have videos of in the future that I haven't done yet. So let's look at some of the exterior aspects of this. So the wheels are optional. These are 21-inch forged wheels from Porsche. These are the I can't remember the exact name of it. I'll show the option list a little bit later in the video. But these are forged wheels from Porsche, and they have the optional paint color scheme, right? Which is the I believe they call it satin aurum. So that's the gold color for this. The actual color for the car itself is frozen blue metallic, and it looks a lot better in person than photos, and probably also in video form. I'm not sure, but it definitely looks more striking and looks beautiful in person. So let's take a look at some of the things that we can show here, and I'll do a walkthrough. So keys over here. Let's go ahead and pop the frunk. There we go. Let's see what's underneath here. Okay, so I purchased as a just in the Porsche online shop the liner for the frunk, and then also the safety triangle as well. So that's I actually got the liners. I'll show you all around. So we'll keep that open, and I bought the liners for all of it basically replaced all of the carpeted mats that the car came with. So there's liners there, there's liners here, and again, these are just rubber liners. So I got the liner for the hatch area as well. So yeah, liners all the way around. They weren't super expensive. I just like doing that for pretty much all the vehicles that I have. Just if I'm hiking, out walking around, on dusty trails or picking up rocks or whatever in my shoes, it's just a lot easier. And especially also in wintertime too, where there's snow and slush and all that. It's just easier to have that. So yeah, this is pretty much the exterior. I'm not going to obviously go into super detail here, just because there's obviously lots of videos that are out there that cover all of this, and I'm just going to give you my impressions basically as an owner of this vehicle for the past 2 years. So yeah, let's close up the frunk over here. We'll get in the car and we'll start doing the video drive portion of this. I'll do a range test on this, not today, but I will be doing a range test on this, probably 70 mile an hour here in the next couple of days here. So stay tuned for that as a separate video. Okay, actually, before we start the drive portion of this, let's go ahead and take a look at the interior a little bit, just in terms of like fit and finish, the details there a little bit, just so you can see how things are holding up after 2 years. So this has the beige interior. Again, I'll have to look this up to see what it is specifically called. And then I optioned the neodyme trim pieces, and so you'll see that throughout, including like here, which I think it looks great. This also has this button right here, the central button. I optioned the heated, ventilated, and also massage seats, and so this button here will turn on the massage program that you have set. But as you can see, I mean, obviously a little bit dirty. I cleaned this, but you could see it's got some wear and tear after 27,000 miles. These are all likely. Obviously, these are light interiors, so a really good detail would get a lot of this stuff out. But you can see how it's kind of holding up. I do keep this as clean as I can, but it's also driven, right? And so these are going to happen, especially when you have a light interior like this. But otherwise, there's really no wear on like the seats. Some discoloration from jeans and yada yada, right? But you don't see any obvious wear like in the leather here. The interior itself, has I'm looking at the glass over here, not just the upper roof portion. I also optioned I think they call it the thermally and noise insulated glass throughout. And so it's actually, it's been great because it definitely keeps noise and heat out as much as possible. But the one annoying part of this is that because it's got the insulation, a lot of these readers, fob readers and like things like that, they don't work very well here. And so you see that there's actually a strip here. This is where you're supposed to be placing any kind of transponders or whatever, so that it'll actually read. Unfortunately, the problem is, let me get in here. It's so small, right? This is like I don't know if I have anything to compare it to. Maybe I'll grab the key here. You can see that it's just not. It's tiny, right? And so I have two other transponders that are larger than what's available here or on this side, and so it's not. It hasn't been great. I have one of my transponders that's too big for this space. Even if it's like a little bit out, it actually won't read. So I have to just keep it with me and just roll the windows down when I pull up to that particular gate and let the reader do its job. So that's unfortunately a downfall of the thermally and noise insulated glass in the vehicle here. But the roof area, all of this does a much better job of keeping heat out than my Teslas do. So it's definitely a noticeable improvement during the daytime. Even in the hot summer of Southern California, it keeps it pretty cool here. I also have the heads-up display, as you can see here. I mentioned this in one of my other videos. I'm going to close the door here. I mentioned this in one of my other videos that I actually never knew, at least for the first, I don't know, maybe like 10,000 miles of driving or whatever, that you could see this pretty noticeable and really pretty ugly, some of the features that are reflecting off the glass from the dash area. So that's what that looks like. And if you have the heads-up display, then you have it a little bit worse because you get this whole, right, panel that's out, and then you can see the kind of the dips, the curves, and things like that. You can see it, the reflecting off the glass. I never noticed it until, like I said, about probably 10,000 miles of driving. Somebody pointed that out to me, and then ever since then, I've not been able to unsee it. So it's there. I do at least appreciate seeing all of the data that's displayed on the heads-up display here. So I'd rather have it than not, but for a future Porsche product, they really need to do a better job with hiding some of these like reflective surfaces and kind of the trim panels and like things like that, so they don't show up. Less reflectivity would be great, but then also as you can see, right, the pieces themselves, I mean, all of these things, they like reflect, especially this area here. So that's not great. Otherwise, visibility is awesome in this car. I would say that it's probably not as good as a Tesla Model 3, like in terms of visibility, but it's quite good. I happen to think the Model 3 is one of the best in class in terms of visibility outside of the car, and this comes close, but it's not quite there. Otherwise, yeah, let's go ahead and pan around here a little bit. I got the 2+1 seating option back there. So that was another, I think that was only like $500 or something like that. So there you go. Pretty much everything in the Porsche, you've got an option. Again, that's the trim piece I'm looking at right there. That's the neodyme. One thing that I don't really like in this car is here. Let me pan the camera back a little bit here. Let's see if so we can get more. Nope, we're where we the farthest we can go back here. I had to install this separately as a phone charger for my iPhone because the default phone charger is hidden in this guy here under the center console, and it's actually it's this piece over here, wireless charging. I'm not sure why it's hidden here. I don't actually think that this is the only Porsche that has this issue, at least in the years that they were, well, maybe they've changed it now. But as recently as 2 years ago, wireless charging is stuck here. You put your phone here and you close the center console. Seems kind of weird. And you're charging your phone wirelessly, except that thing gets super hot. And so, yeah, that phone gets super hot. And it's not great. Let's take a look at a couple of other things here. So this is, I didn't option for the passenger user interface display. I didn't think it was necessary. I still don't think it's necessary now. But otherwise it defaults comes with the center screen. This is the temperature, climate control, charging control. You can see there's the optional gravel mode here that this particular command does not show up in a Cross Turismo or other Taycans that aren't equipped with the off-road package, or at least that's what I remember. This thing here, touchscreen, I hate this. It's when it's working like it is now, it's awesome. But this thing here, the first year I had this vehicle, from the day I took delivery, and I kid you not, this is not a hyperbole. From the day that I took delivery of this vehicle, this screen was not responsive to touch. It was broken. And it was it probably responded like 10% of the time. The rest of the time, it was just completely unresponsive. This is the only way for climate controls. And so when I took delivery of this thing wasn't working, and I had no way to adjust the climate except using voice commands, which in this car is terrible. Using voice commands here, you got to repeat this thing 10 times before it knows what to do. You have to say it in very specific languages, words. I mean, not languages, but to say very specific words and phrases. And it still did not do a good job of recognizing what I was trying to tell it. And all I'm trying to tell it is turn down the temperature, turn up the temperature, turn on the fan speed, reduce the fan speed, things like that. And it did a horrible job of recognizing it. I had to put up with it for a year because these things were so supply chain constrained, what have you, that they could not get me a service appointment to get a replacement screen done for about 15 months after I took delivery of the car. So, I'm 24 months into ownership of this thing. 15 months of that, I didn't have a working touchscreen here. No way to adjust temperature like this, right? Fan speed, temperature settings. This is fine when it's working. It's haptic. You get a nice feedback, as probably a lot of people watching this knows themselves or feels the same way. Obviously, I think a lot of us would prefer physical buttons, but it is what it is. Everybody's going this way, and so no use in me complaining about all the digital buttons, even for accessing temperature and climate control and things like that. So this has been fine. As long as it works, it's okay. There's like you're supposed to be able to write some commands and like things like that over here, but I don't even know what to do with that stuff, so I never use it. You can look at charging systems, right? Where your charge capacity. I've got heated, ventilated seats over here. These work great. Like I said, also massage seats as well. So I wanted to show you this here. This is just a minor quibble. In Tesla, you have the option of changing your car's colors. Your car displays colors of your car. So this visualization inside the car, you're able to change that to match what you have on the exterior, or maybe just go with some other color. In the Porsche, you can't do it. So this car is frozen blue, and the in-dash display here, it's always white. At least they got the right wheel. That is definitely the wheels that I have. But again, the wheels are not the right color. the car is not the right color. Minor things, but just things that it's a little bit annoying, right? You can't adjust that. I understand if you don't have that by default, but if you can, when I took delivery of the car, obviously, but if you could allow me to adjust that, that would be a lot easier or a lot better. Just a better user experience overall. Otherwise, I don't really have a lot of quibbles with the displays or anything like that. The display is sharp. It's pretty responsive. Again, it's not Tesla responsive. I think the only thing, other thing that's a bit of annoyance with the display is you just like pretty much all non-Teslas or Rivians, everyone else locks you out. All the other car manufacturers, especially the legacy automakers, right? They lock you out of functions when you're driving. So I can't call up a new navigation or type in a new destination address when I'm driving because it locks me out. I think it's unsafe. Yet you could do that. Legacy automakers do that, but you could do that all day long. You can change whatever you want. Search, even surf the web. In some cases, in Teslas, while you're driving, you're moving, and all that, and that's just a much better user experience. I mean, it's 2023. Automakers need to get with the program and stop doing stuff like that. I paid for the ability to navigate. Your voice functions suck, and so it's not going to accept my voice commands. I mean, what am I supposed to do? It's 2023. I'm just going to pull over on the side of the road, put this thing in park so I can reroute, put it in a different address, or search for the nearest place to eat or something like that. Like, come on, nobody's doing that, right? So give us that functionality. All right, enough of a rant. Let's see here. What else have I optioned here? Let's take a look over here. So this is Sport Chrono. This was an option. This does not come with my model year. I don't know if it does now, but twisting this dial will. Let's see if I can adjust this a little bit here so you can see. Well, I guess you can't. Twisting this will adjust the drive modes. So right now it's at normal. Twisting this will adjust to different drive modes here. I normally always just drive it either on normal, which is what it defaults to when you start up the car, or I'll set it to individual. And so if you look at individual, my settings for individual would be chassis on normal, and this is suspension, right? Your suspension setting. I'll keep that on normal. Chassis height, I'll put that at regular, which again in the Cross Turismo with the off-road packages like I have is 1.5-inch raised compared to other Taycans here. Recuperation, which is just Regen, I have that set to on for Sport Plus, and power for Sport Plus. I guess you can see it changing over here, right? Yeah. So if I change, Let's go ahead and change to normal. You know, it's still kind of working. This right now, this is on range, and if you look at setting it to range, it says that it's a max of 85 miles an hour. I never use range. I actually think it's actually kind of dangerous. Not sure why I would want to purposely restrain myself to a max speed of 85 miles an hour. You know, if I accidentally leave it on range and I'm going to try to pass somebody and maybe it's a dangerous situation I'm trying to get out of, I don't want to be stuck, you know, kind of hitting a wall at like 85 miles an hour or whatever on acceleration. So I never use this. You know, again, it's always normal. I've obviously tested Sport Plus. I've put miles on it, but it's not a daily thing. So normal or individual for me over here. We can kind of talk a little bit about the different drive modes, you know, and things like that. But I think your time and my time is probably better used for just going on a drive. You know, at this point, I can point out a couple other things here. So yeah, let's cut this portion of the video off and let's start the drive. Okay, here we go. We're in the car. Let's go ahead and get this thing powered on and let's go on a drive. All right, here we go. I found in 27,000 miles of driving, well, almost 28,000 miles, you can see here, that this range is really accurate, unlike Tesla's range. And so I really like that about the Taycan and its range estimation. Definitely a lot more real world than Tesla's overly optimistic system there. So all right, let's go and let's get going here. I will have to manually use this button to turn on Regen and Recuperation. I think it's we saw it's called here in Porsche parlance, but that is effectively on max Regen when you do that. If you don't have that Recuperation turned on, and again, you have to do this manually every time you drive this car, you've got to go ahead and turn it on because by default it's set to off. And Recuperation setting to off means that there's little to no regen braking, and that is by design, by Porsche design. I think their intent was their customers are almost certainly coming from ICE vehicles, and ICE vehicle owners are not going to be used to one pedal driving, and so by default they have Recuperation turned off. Now, even when I go and manually turn it on, it is not the. I forgot to put my seatbelt on. I'm too busy recording this video. Here we go. With Recuperation on, it's still not capable of one pedal driving. Not really. You could probably make do, figure some way out, but it still relies on a lot of coasting. And there is some regen for sure. There's some Recuperation, but it's not the way that you would expect from if you're coming from other EVs like Teslas, Rivians, and other EVs where you let off the accelerator and the car immediately starts to feel like it's braking in these other EVs. In this one, it's not. You let off the accelerator. I mean, even right now, you know, I'm creeping just without the accelerator or being on the brakes. So, all right, here we go. Not sure if you can see the tire pressures. You know, this is a staggered 21-inch setup. I want to say it's 265 tire width up front and 305s in the rear. You know, I think it goes without saying this car handles phenomenally. It is a Porsche. It drives, it turns, brakes, feels everything like a Porsche. Power in this particular spec that I got, not the best. The Taycan 4, the base model for the base model for the Taycan Cross Turismo is what I have here. Then the base model is an all-wheel drive version. That's why it's just called the Taycan 4. In the sedan version of Taycans, you can actually get the base model, which is just a rear-wheel drive version. And this particular one, the Cross Turismo, the base spec is all-wheel drive. The base spec also includes a large battery on this thing. And this one, base spec does about, I think it's rated at like 225 mile range on a full charge, but I have seen for even my particular spec, when I've optioned for the 21-inch wheels, which are actually less efficient than what is rated by the EPA. I think they rated it on the 19-inch, the Cross Turismo 4s, and I want to say that was 225 EPA rated. Even with my 21-inch wheels, I have gotten anywhere between 275 to 305 in terms of like real world range on road trips and things like that. So definitely much more range. As you all know, probably by now, you've seen these in all publications, YouTube videos, and things like that. The Taycan is EPA range is really conservative, and the actual range is a lot better. So let's see here. What else? What else we want to talk about? We talked a little bit about the handling. Oh, I didn't finish talking about the power. So this one has 469 horsepower in just in normal driving situations. It's plenty sufficient. I mean, it's fast. It's it gets up and going. It's an EV, right? So there's just instant torque. But it's nothing compared to a lot of other EVs out there that have 500, 600 horsepower, may even weigh a little less. I think this one weighs about 5,400 pounds or something like that. Maybe not that much. Maybe like 5,200 or so. I have to take a look at the specs a little later for this particular one. But it's plenty fast, and it corners on a dime. I've got the rear wheel steering option. That was optional. I've got Porsche's PTV Plus, Torque Vectoring Plus. That's optional. Obviously the upgraded wheels and the 305 rear tires with rear tires, those are optional. And that's might be it in terms of handling dynamics. Things that are optional on this car. I didn't get the dynamic chassis control. I didn't feel like it needed it. It's still, it's a Porsche. It doesn't really need that. It corners flat out anyways. I'm sure the PDCC, I've actually driven PDCC vehicles, Taycans, for tests, and they're good, they're great, I guess, but it's not worth the extra several $1,000s for the option, if you ask me, because it's unless you're tracking your Taycan, which I'm sure not too many people are doing that, then I don't really think you need PDCC on a day-to-day basis. Same thing with the carbon ceramic brakes. I don't have that. I thought that was an unnecessary expense as well. And props to those who have the carbon ceramic brakes. They look cool, but these do the job. They stop fine. Pedal feel is awesome. It's still Porsche tuned braking system. So yeah, excellent pedal feel, excellent stopping power. Stopping is obviously more of a function of grip and tire anyways. And so, the feel comes down to more of the calipers, the brake pads, and the rotor types themselves. And so, of course, the braking feels good. I'm sure if this was a track car, it's not going to shed as much heat from the braking system as a carbon ceramic setup. But again, I'm not really tracking this thing. This is a wagon. It's literally a station wagon, and there's car seats back there typically. And so, I need the room, and the room is for day-to-day living, and not for tracking. So, the options that I've spec'd above and beyond, right, the basic Porsche option sheets, or the base models, I should say, those are just for comfort and for the overall user experience, and not so much oriented to all-out performance or anything like that. And hence the base model nature of this thing, the 469 horsepower. I make it sound like I'm complaining about it, I guess. Hopefully it doesn't sound like that. I'm not complaining about 469 horsepower. Obviously I spec'd it that way, and it's fine. I feel like it gives me a great balance between range efficiency and just day-to-day usable power on the freeways, things like that. And this car, it's really efficient. Now, I don't know, if you could see the UI clearly from here. I didn't have my POV camera set up with me today, so I don't have the ability to really clearly show you what I'm doing here on the UI. But if you look at the range or the efficiency of this car, let's see here. That's going to be under trip. So let's see what this thing says. So overall, the life of this vehicle, total drive time, right now it says 993 hours, 27,701 miles. So even over 27,000 miles, so less than 30 miles, I've almost put 1,000 hours into this thing. That just kind of goes to show everybody out there how much time we actually spend in our cars, right? It's this is a huge thing. We if you drive a lot, you kind of live in these things, and so 1,000 hours in a Taycan EV, and over that time, my consumption here, the way that Porsche measures this stuff, or at least it displays this stuff, is I have averaged 28.5 kilowatt hour per 100 miles. So I think if you were to convert that into Tesla parlance, Tesla does it by watt per mile. And so my Tesla Model X Plaid, I am averaging 329 watt per mile. And this one, the Taycan 4 Cross Turismo, is averaging 28.5 kilowatt per 100 miles. And so, if you do the conversion, you can see this is significantly more efficient than my Model X Plaid. And of course, the Model X Plaid is 3 rows. This is only 2 rows. Model X Plaid has 1,020 horsepower. It's roomier. It's bigger. It's a bigger vehicle. More massive, and it's just is not as efficient as the Taycan here. I've seen Model 3. My experience with the Model 3 is about 250 watt per mile. That's what I get in my normal driving with the Model 3. And so this Taycan, again, 28.5 here. And so it's not quite as efficient as a Model 3, but it's still pretty darn efficient, for Porsche's first EV. I think they did a great job with efficiency here, despite the poor EPA ratings. And so don't believe any of that. This car is actually extremely efficient, and again, it's more efficient than my Plaid. Nowhere near as powerful as the Plaid, obviously. All right, let's a couple other things that I want to hit on with this. I love the dynamic air suspension settings. If you could see this part here, it's showing that this car is now set to its lowest ride height, and that's because it knows it's on a freeway and I'm doing freeway things, and so it's just going to set it to its lowest ride height, and that's just set on auto, so it'll do that. Now, of course, I could keep it at specific ride height, but I just leave that part of it on auto so it knows what to do. When it gets to off the freeway, it'll raise the suspension in most cases back to a kind of a normal setting, and then when I park, it will also lower it reasonably if you have it on a higher raised suspension setting. Otherwise, there are lots to love about this. The display here, it's wonderful. If you've seen my video on the InnoDrive review that I did about a month ago or so, I talk a little bit about this stuff. And here again, I love the customization options. I can scroll through and adjust like different settings, what I want to see with different displays. You see this a lot. Obviously, this isn't unique to the Taycan. You see this in a lot of modern higher end cars where you have all of these adjustability options here. Unfortunately, you don't get that in Teslas. You don't get that in the Model S or the Model X, where you have this central instrument cluster. You can't adjust any of those settings or any of your display settings. So you're kind of locked into that. So the fact that the Taycan has ones where you can adjust, I love that. I'm not going to go through all the functions here, but this is what I have customized. I always want to see tire pressure. Those are important to me. I like seeing a map display over here, and then on the right side over here I have other important data that's important to me. Obviously today's date. I could see state of charge, 70% right now. I could see the battery temperature, which I really appreciate seeing that. Just so I can, it's fun, for me as a car enthusiast, EV enthusiast, to always monitor my high voltage battery temperature and see what it's doing when I'm driving hard, when I'm coasting, or when I'm charging, or when it's warming up the battery, getting ready to charge, and things like that. And then the altitude according to GPS reading over here. So that's what I've got this set up as. Otherwise, this car, it's a fantastic driving machine. It's so much more responsive than my Model X Plaid out of the gate. I've since done suspension mods, wheels and tires and things like that on the Model X that has improved the handling dynamics of it to a point where I love driving the Model X Plaid. But there's nothing like getting behind the wheel of a Porsche Taycan and just start, you feel it immediately. As soon as you turn the wheel, you feel the handling dynamics, the tuning, just so much better than what Tesla does. And that's not a surprise, right? It's Porsche. They've got this racing history. That's just their brand, and so you feel that handling dynamics, braking, and things like that. So it's great. I keep harping on this in pretty much all the videos, not literally every single one, but a lot of the videos I've done. You can't see it here, but I can. Blind spot indicators are really important to me. This car has them, as does pretty much every car made in the last however many years, 7-8 years, except for Teslas. Teslas don't have that. The new Cybertruck does have a blind spot indicator. The Model 3 refresh that is not out yet in the US also are supposed to have blind spot indicators, so that's great. I just wish the X Plaid, the S Plaid, all the other Model 3s, S's, X, Model Ys that they've ever built have had blind spot indicators. Maybe that's just me, but it's just such a big safety thing, like I keep saying in my videos. I just want to be able to glance in my mirrors and see if it's telling me there's somebody in my blind spot or not. So I've already done an extensive video on Porsche's InnoDrive system, which is basically Porsche's version of autopilot. And that's a separate video. I'm not going to really do that here, but I will just say, I did that video about a month ago, and in that time since, I've done same routes back to back with both the Taycan and the Model X Plaid, just comparing on my own, not even recording footage for it. The basic autopilot that I have in the Model X Plaid with the InnoDrive that I paid for, the option that I paid for in the Taycan, on the same roads, same conditions, just to do a test. And it's basically what I repeat it every time, every day, every time I do this kind of test. It's the same thing. So what you saw in the InnoDrive video, that's what it is on a day-to-day basis. So here's a quick, without going to all that, in depth on this stuff, quick comparison for you. So Tesla basic autopilot, it's rock solid. It's awesome. You put that thing on, it will hold lane, auto steer on within your lanes. It'll keep lane keep. It's rock solid. It never ever loses the lanes. Both sides of the lane, left side, right side of the lane, it just locks in. It keeps your car right in the center of the road. It steers for you, so even on gradual turns, while on freeways or off freeways, it's fully locked in. You could literally, if the Tesla, the system isn't warning you to keep your hands on the wheel, you literally don't need to keep your hands on the wheel. It turns, brakes, steers, right? It does all of those things rock solid, especially the lane keeping and the turning. Porsche's InnoDrive, you can't do that. What I've realized driving these things back to back to back to back, yada yada, is that InnoDrive is it's a great system if you're just going to keep your hands on the wheel and just paying attention all the time. You've got full attention on the road, and it will make your steering life a lot easier. It will reduce the effort it takes to lane keep and to steer, but I don't know if you can see this on video or not, you know, but you can see it here. Just as I showed in my InnoDrive video from a month ago, it keeps losing these lanes. And so right now it's got both lanes red, rock solid. If I put InnoDrive on, you know, right now it's not on right now, but if I put InnoDrive on when both lanes are rock solid, it'll steer and keep the car in the middle of that lane. It'll steer through gradual turns, curves, you know, mild curves. It'll do that great, but you just can't rely on it being locked in on these lanes. So right now, it's got both lanes locked in. I'm going to engage InnoDrive, and so right now, hands off the wheel. InnoDrive is going to keep a great job right now of lane centering, and even if there's a gradual curve coming up, it'll do a great job, you know, taking on those gradual curves without input. But as we keep going here, you're going to see that you can't actually do this for an extensive period of time, because it'll inexplicably lose lanes. So for no reason at all, it'll drop like a left lane, or it'll drop a right lane, it'll drop both lanes, and all of a sudden steering assist becomes momentarily unavailable. Like right now, the left lane, it's gone. It doesn't up now, there it's picked it back up again. And so when it glitches out like that, it doesn't recognize the lanes anymore. And so if you could get yourself in a very dangerous situation if your hand's not on the wheel. But, you know, like I said, what I've noticed is that if you're not paying attention to the lane markings, and you're just driving this thing with InnoDrive on, foot off the brake, foot off the throttle here, because InnoDrive is doing the work. As long as you keep your hands on the wheel and steer a little bit, you don't have to put in anywhere near the steering effort that you would if InnoDrive is off, but just steer a little bit. You're not actually ever really going to know these lanes are being lost just as you drive. And so the intermittent issues with the lanes coming and going, you're not going to notice the difference. So I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that this being my first EV, this being at the time that I took delivery of this car, the best hands-free, quote unquote hands-free assisted driving system that I've had up and down that point in time, I never paid attention enough to know that InnoDrive was losing these lane markings constantly. And so it never bothered me. As long as I was paying attention on the road, you know, I could take my foot off the brake, take my foot off the throttle, let InnoDrive do the work for the most part, apply some steering effort, and it just made my driving life a lot easier. I didn't have to apply lots of steering effort. I didn't have to constantly, you know, brake and hit the throttle. Didn't have to do any of that. It made my driving life a lot easier. But in the time since, I have now put on 40, almost 50,000 miles in my Model X Plaid using basic autopilot that comes with the Model X. Or I should say, basic autopilot that comes with all Teslas. Basic autopilot blows this thing out of the water completely. Okay, let's talk about a couple of other things that I want to hit on with this 2-year review. I have not had really any issues with this car aside from that touchscreen issue I showed you earlier in this video. This car has always performed fine. I've not had any catastrophic issues that require dealer service or anything like that. It has been to the dealer for the central screen issue, and I've done one tire replacement, one set of tires. Needed a new set of tires at about 20,000 miles. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know, or you could probably guess, I am pretty religious about maintaining my tires in terms of always maintaining proper tire pressures and just really monitoring tire life. So I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff, and even I was only able to get 20,000 miles out of the OEM tires. So not great, but you know, what are you going to do? I think these tires are rated at I want to say maybe like 280 tread wear, so it's kind of normal. You know, it's expensive to replace every 20,000 miles, but that's what you get when you have a car like this, right? It doesn't matter. There's been a couple of recalls, couple of service updates. I've done a couple of the over-the-air software updates, and those have been fine. Definitely not as, I would say, not as nowhere near as numerous of OTA software updates in this thing as you get in a Tesla, for example. I'm getting OTA updates in a Tesla probably once a month, if not twice a month. In this one, it may be like once a year. I think I've gotten maybe 2, maybe 3 at most OTA updates. There's been a couple of software updates that needed to be applied at the dealership, and so I've had to drop it off, let them do the work there. Service-wise, service, build quality, warranty-wise, I guess if you will, yeah, I've had no issues with this thing except for the central screen. I've had far more issues with my Tesla, the Model X Plaid, going back into the service center for a couple of warranty things like here and there. Nothing catastrophic, just trim stuff in the Model X Plaid, but nothing in the Porsche at all except for that central screen and the requisite software updates, that the ones that they can't push out over the air. They make you go into the dealership to apply those updates. I've got actually another one of those coming up. I've got an appointment scheduled a couple of weeks from now to do another one of those updates at the dealership. Now, when I first got this car 2 years ago, the wait time to get serviced was horrendous. So even to get my central screen looked at, I had to book an appointment and wait months because there wasn't enough qualified Taycan service technicians at Porsche dealerships that were trained to handle the volume of work that at least California, especially Southern California, Porsche dealers were getting in terms of Taycan service requests. And so I think the longest I've had to wait was something like 5 months or something like that. And again, nothing catastrophic, just had to, put a service appointment request 5 months on the calendar. This time around, when I went to go make my most recent service appointment that I was just talking about to just apply some software updates, I was able to make that appointment within 2 weeks. So it seems like things have gotten a lot better out there in terms of Taycan service turnaround times, at least here in Southern California, than they were even a year ago. Certainly 2 years ago. It was a little weird, right? Even 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when I first took delivery of this car, the Taycans had already been on the market for 2 years, at that point. And it was a little bit jarring not to have enough Taycan trained technicians to work on your car right away. I mean, with a car like this, I don't expect somebody to be available tomorrow, to work on the car, or maybe not even in 3 or 4 days or whatever. But you would certainly think like 1 to 2 weeks would be a reasonable turnaround time. And 2 years ago when I got this car, it certainly wasn't, right? Like I said, I think the fastest turnaround time I was getting back then was maybe about 2 months. Otherwise, it was about 5 months or so. But now, now it seems like it is at that 2 to 3 weeks. This thing, when I took delivery, I'm sure it's still the case now, they give you 3 years of free charging at Electrify America. 2 years ago, if we rewind time back to November 2021, I thought it was awesome. I hit up all my local Electrify America stations to take advantage of that. I wasn't even charging at home, even though I have the capability to charge at home back then, just because if I was going to get it for free for 3 years from Electrify America, I was certainly going to take advantage of that. And so every one of my charging sessions initially in that pretty much that first year that I owned this car was down in Electrify America. And November 2021, the Electrify America network was pretty solid. I had read horror stories, right, about Electrify America before I took delivery of this car, before I started using it. And when I first got it and I started using it, I was like, oh, what's the big deal? It seems like it's working fine to me. Maybe one connector every once in a while was down, non-functional. But for the most part, the network was solid. But then, as the months started rolling by, I started seeing more and more other EVs on the road, right? Obviously, at the time where I got this car, there was hardly any Mach-E's out there. There's hardly any ID3s. There's hardly any Kias and Hyundais EVs that are out there, at least, in terms of ones that could really take advantage of DC fast charging. And when you go to the Electrify America station back then, you had plenty of stall available, and so even on the rare chance back in November 2021 for me, where you would encounter a bad broken, Electrify America stall, you could quickly move on to another one near you. But then as the months started going, the November 2021 turned into, quarter one of January. I'm sorry, quarter one of 2022, quarter two of 2022, right? As the months started going by, obviously EV adoption increased hand over fist, and these Electrify America stations were pretty much fully occupied because everybody was getting free charging sessions when they were buying their cars. 1 year here, 2 years there, depending on the manufacturer that you were buying your EV from. They would do these 1, 2, 3 year free charging deals at Electrify America, and all of a sudden everybody's getting free charging at Electrify America with their new EVs. That seems great. Seems great for the environment and and all of that for EV adoption. Except it was overwhelming Electrify America's network, and more stations, more stalls started going down, and more usage than ever. And so it really made it a really, really terrible experience. So as 2022 wore on for me, Electrify America became very, very frustrating. And I would say for all of 2023, it's been pretty much unusable. It went from the tail end of 2021, where I really, really liked the network, to, oh man, 2022, this is starting to not look good, in 2023 being completely unusable. That's kind of how far they've fallen in a period of 2 years. This is one of the things that's like really annoying about this vehicle. I have it set to give me alerts, push alerts to me, and it's constantly doing this. It'll send me a traffic alert that alerts me to wrong way driving, but then it's 22 miles away. It says distance 22 miles. I've seen wrong way traffic alerts like 30 to 40 miles away. And it's like, I mean, that sucks that somebody is driving the wrong way, and it's good to notify people, but I'm 22 miles away. What does that have to do with me? I'm in Southern California. I'm never going to ever see that person. I'm never going to, you know how long it's going to take me in this kind of traffic to go 22 miles? North San Dimas Avenue, I don't even know where that is. Why send this to me? And it's just, I don't know if you can see it, but it's just stuck on the screen. I have to go ahead and X out of it or hit OK to actually dismiss that. So it's not uncommon to get 3 or 4 of those alerts in like a 2-hour drive, just driving around Southern California. It's like, hey, come on. I think we should be a little bit better about notifying people. If you're, I would absolutely want to know that there's a wrong way driver if they're on the same freeway that I'm on, and they're within like 5-10 miles or something like that. And that should, ideally, it should be dynamic, right? You should have that set to maybe 10 miles, 15 miles if it's the middle of the night and there's hardly any traffic out, but if it's during dense traffic periods here in Southern California, and it's the same freeway, there's a wrong way driver, I don't think I need to know about that. If it's 20, even if it's the same freeway, if it's 22 miles away, I don't think I need to know about that. I certainly don't need to know about it on surface streets. One other thing I wanted to touch on is the ownership experience in terms of just, I don't know what you really call it, lifestyle with this thing. The mobile app for Porsches, it sucks. It's gone through multiple iterations since I've owned this car in the last 2 years, and it's changed. And I would not say it's gotten any better. It's changed quite a bit. They've added some functionality, but overall, it's slow, and it's just slow. When you have a Tesla and you fire up the Tesla mobile app, it very, very quickly, within a few seconds, if not instantaneously, tells you your status of your car in real time. It shows you your car location. It gives you commands of those cars function in real time. So, you could be miles away, and you could fire up your Tesla app and you can see just almost instantaneously where your car is located. You can say, for whatever reason, I want to unlock the door. That's, it's a 2-second thing, for you to do that. 1 second, pull your phone out of your pocket, You know, probably 1 second to fire up your Tesla app, 1 second to, you know, to see that it's connected to the car, you know, maybe 1 second to unlock the door using that thing. It's super fast. So maybe not 2 seconds, right? You know, but it's super fast. With the Porsche mobile app, take that thing out of your pocket, you fire up the Porsche app, you could be looking at that thing for, I don't know, like, you know, minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, sometimes an eternity, and it just won't connect to your car. You could have direct line of sight to your car out in a wide open space, and you could be sitting there looking at your app for minutes, like, and it's like, oh, is it ever going to connect? Like, I could already see the car right in front of me, but your app and the car's, you know, I think it's PCM, right? Porsche Communication Manager or whatever. It's not synced up, and it's just not reliable. You know, I don't know if that's a hardware thing, that's a software thing, you know, that's a server cloud thing. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it's clearly it's broken. And I find the actual in-car stuff to be fine. You know, I've not seen cases where the navigation isn't working, communication with Porsche servers for whatever reason within the car. You know, that always seems pretty solid. You know, I've not really experienced anything, any bad things about that. So what I'm to clarify, right? What I'm really talking about is the mobile app, the Porsche mobile app's communication with the car itself. That's the part that is very, very unreliable. There are going to be times, you know, there have been times where I fire up my Porsche mobile app, and within, like, you know, 15, 20 seconds, it shows me my car status. You know, my doors are locked, if the alarm has gone off, if, you know, my location, you know, 10, 15 seconds for the Porsche app, it's pretty good. You know, if it happens 10, 15 seconds, it's not Tesla fast, but I will take that any day of the week if it's reliable. But it's generally not 10, 15 seconds. You know, that's the fastest that it could be. Like I said, it's usually minutes before it actually connect. But, you know, to be fair, that is also not something that's isolated to Porsche either. You know, I have rented and driven other EVs from legacy automakers that have a pretty poor mobile app experience, just the same way that I'm describing, you know, as the Porsche mobile app. And so it's not unique to this particular manufacturer, this particular car. You know, it's just that you get a non-legacy, right? You know, one of these startup EV manufacturers, they've been dialed into this thing from the start, you know, because software is such an important part of what these startups are doing. And so that's why the Tesla app is awesome, you know, in terms of how quickly it communicates with, you know, with the car, how much functionality and features, you know, it has. Rivian, I did not feel it was quite as good, or I don't feel it's quite as good as Tesla's right now. I think that's pretty obvious that it's not quite as good, but it's still light years better than what a legacy automaker can do. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, I think visibility of this car has just been tremendous. It's really awesome. Not quite as good as a Tesla Model 3, but visibility is definitely better in the Taycan than it is in my Model X Plaid. It's easier to see over the hood. You get a better view of well, I guess the A-pillars are thinner, and so just general visibility out of the windshield, past the pillars, out the side windows, just a lot better than the Model X. So that's one thing. The other thing too, though, with this car is actually very wide, and so it's deceptively wide. You know, you think it's a small car, but it's not. It's a lot wider than you would expect. So you got to be mindful of that as you're driving and turning and, you know, getting into parking situations and things like that. I should also say that another criticism I have with this car is the backup camera is terrible. It gives you this fisheye effect by design, I think, or I've read. It's by design, and it's awful. It's like one of the worst backup cameras I've ever seen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about utility. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I have taken this car off-road, deep gravel, dirt, a little bit of mud, some snow, and it's performed great, even with the summer tires that are on this car. And so, you know, I really feel like utility-wise, this thing is a really, really capable all-rounder. You know, obviously, the wagon body style, it gives you more room in the trunk slash hatch area. So those have been valuable for me because, you know, I can carry strollers and lots of, you know, family backpacks, right? You know, things like that there when I need to. And just more versatile in terms of what you can do with the wagon body shape in a hatch area versus, you know, a traditional trunk, you know, that has a pillar back there. All right, so we're kind of coming up on the end of our drive over here, and I will wrap this up. Actually, I want to show you what I was just talking about a little bit ago with. All right, look at that. Another traffic alert. Wrong way driving. This is the same alert I saw earlier, but now it is now at distance of 20 miles. Check that out. Instead of 22. So now we have to dismiss this. All right. So before we wrap up here, I wanted to show the option sheet for my Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. On top of the base price of $93,700 of the Taycan 4 Cross Turismo, I added an additional $30,000 in options. The option list is fairly extensive, but of course you could easily play around with the Porsche configurator and really double that amount. I'm very happy with the options that I did select, and I'm even happier that I didn't have to pay markup. I got this thing right before markups became a thing for Taycans, and I really can't imagine having to pay an additional $10,000 or $25,000 for a markup like some dealers were charging in the immediate months after I picked up my car. So let me go ahead and wrap up my thoughts here on this Taycan 4 Cross Turismo after 2 years of ownership and living with this vehicle. The best way to sum it up is that it's been a fantastic vehicle, and it's been everything I thought it was going to be when I first started thinking about buying a Taycan. I love the way it drives and feels, I love the way it looks, and I love the versatility of it. The wagon body makes it more roomy in terms of rear headroom and cargo capacity. It's been perfect for a small family. In the 2 years that I've had it, it's been everything from a fun runabout grocery getter to a kids activity and kids school scooper to a daily freeway commuter that's just very enjoyable to drive. And without a doubt, it is an efficient long-range road tripper with great DC fast charging performance. And plus, it's even handled some light off-roading in getting me to and from out of the way Airbnb rentals on, you know, long dirt roads and gravel roads. It's a high-end, low-volume production car, and so the build quality was awesome and just really spot on. The fit and finish and interior and exterior durability have held up really well over the past 2 years. This car is quick, it handles great, it's got tons of cornering grip, and the air suspension makes it so comfortable and versatile. And the cabin is so quiet too. Braking performance and braking feel is phenomenal. If this is your first EV, or if you just don't like the one-pedal driving functionality of other EVs, then you're really going to like the brake and regen tuning here in this car. It's been rock solid when it comes to reliability, and like all EVs, the maintenance costs have been so very low, with the only maintenance items, being one new set of tires, one new cabin air filter, a new set of windshield wipers, and one key battery replacement. So those are the big ticket items. But now on to some small things that I really liked about this car. I like how Porsche put in charging ports on both sides of the car. That has been very useful, even though you can only DC fast charge on the driver's side. Still, having the ability to AC charge on either side of the car is really an underrated thing for your day-to-day home charging needs, and I think all EV manufacturers should do this going forward. So what haven't I liked in these 2 years? Well, the first one probably isn't going to be a surprise to you. Unless you have a Tesla and you're on the Tesla supercharging network, DC fast charging infrastructure in 2023 needs work. Now, we know the charging network doesn't have anything to do with the design, manufacturing, and general execution of a vehicle.
but we do kind of have to dock the overall ownership and user experience because of it though. I put nearly 28,000 miles on this car in 2 years. In that same time period, I've put over 47,000 miles on my Model X Plaid. And for me, that's mainly just come down to the DC fast charging experience. I would have done a lot more long range road trips with the Taycan if it weren't for how unreliable the Electrify American charging network has been. Back in 2021, late 2021, early 2022, when I first got this vehicle, I did several road trips with it. I've taken it to San Francisco Bay Area from Los Angeles. I've gone to Las Vegas with this thing and back. The road trips were good. It wasn't bad. It was, the charging experience was really good. And generally speaking, back in those times, Electrify America's network was better than what I experienced throughout the rest of 2022 and all of 2023. But yeah, enough about that. Let's move on here. Other things I didn't like during these last 2 years, how long it took to get replacement parts and how long it took to get a service appointment with Porsche service centers. The lower central touchscreen is the only touch point for the climate controls, and my vehicle was delivered new from Porsche with that being broken. It displayed just fine, but it was unresponsive to my touch. And because of delays in getting Taycan service appointments and getting parts in from Porsche, it took 15 months to get that screen replaced. So for the first 15 months, I was driving this thing with the only way to adjust climate controls being voice commands, and the voice command feature is about as lackluster as you can imagine. It was a major annoyance, and the 15-month delay to just get that part replaced was just unacceptable. My climate control issues were made even worse because of Porsche's, quote, virtual airflow control, unquote. Instead of traditional manual air vents and physical fan speed buttons or dials, the virtual airflow control is supposed to deliver air or heat to where you want it and how you want it in terms of volume. But in practice, virtual airflow control is a total failure. It just doesn't work, and the sooner Porsche re-engineers this entire thing, the better. The built-in wireless phone charging is also useless, so you're forced to get aftermarket charging solutions. To be fair, it's a minor quibble because I imagine most of us are going to buy a wireless phone charging mount anyways, no matter what kind of car we have, right? I do that in my other cars too, but I'm pointing it out here because unlike other cars where you're still able to use their factory wireless charging pads for auxiliary charging of other devices, maybe family members, your friends' devices or whatnot. Here in the Taycan, the only place they give you the wireless charge is just completely useless. So why even go through with such a poor design and execution if you're Porsche? So we already talked extensively about Porsche's InnoDrive advanced driver assistance system could really use improvements on the lane identification and lane holding side of things. We also talked about how the Porsche mobile app really needs to be a lot better. I think they're ultimately just going to have to build that app from the ground up again to really be competitive and in terms of competitive with startup EV automakers like Tesla and Rivian. Mechanically, I have no complaints except for the two-speed gearbox that all Taycans come with. It's less of a complaint and more of a confusion thing. I'm confused as to why Porsche felt the need to develop a two-speed gearbox. It just seems to add unnecessary cost, unnecessary complexity, and unnecessary weight where it's just not needed. All the other EV makers, legacy or otherwise, they don't use a multi-speed transmission for their EVs. And several of those, like the Tesla Plaids and the Lucid Air Sapphires, are so much faster in acceleration than even a top spec Taycan Turbo S. So not really sure why they did a two-speed gearbox. I hope they do away with that, in the future. All right, so lastly, I wish there was a little bit more interior cabin storage. The driver and passenger side door pockets are huge, and I really, really like those, but the center armrest storage and the glove box are on the smaller side. It's not terrible, but if you're going to own this and drive it all the time, then you're going to want a little bit more cabin storage in terms of, center armrest storage and glove box. Well, that's pretty much it. There really isn't anything else that I don't like about this car. I'm going to go start doing some free range testing of this car and other EVs I have in the future. So stay tuned for those. And of course, stay tuned for more EV road trip videos. In the meantime, I'm at the park. I'm going to go take a hike. Go and do a hike. You can't always spend your free time driving cars, right, and sitting around as much as we love doing that. Also have to get out into nature and get some exercise too. So let me go and get out of this video and get a hike in. Thank you everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe.